Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Live. This is Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to Law Call. I'm Ted Howell with the law firm of Perry & Young, and we're here to answer your questions about whatever you have on your mind, but in particular tonight we're trying to focus on car, trucks, and motorcycle wrecks. The phone lines will be open, 850-392-1544, or if you're not comfortable calling us live on the air, you can email us at lawcall@wnbb.com. If you have something that doesn't fit in that topic, call in, maybe we can help you, but we would like to focus on the accidents here tonight. And I have the great honor and privilege to introduce Ms. Kelly Robertson here with me from the Perry & Young Law Firm.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Absolutely. And
My
Kelly's
pleasure.
been on here. This is not her first time
Not my
at
first
all.
time.
But Kelly, if you would just briefly describe what you do and how you came to us.
I have been an attorney in Panama City for over 20-something years. I've lost track at this point. Perry & Young they were kind enough to pick me up about 5 years ago, and I have loved getting to know the civil side of the law. I did not do that before, but I have enjoyed getting to know it, and thank you.
Very good, very good. Well, let's go ahead and kick it off. I think we have an email question we can get started with. My boyfriend and I rented a truck to move some stuff. I was the primary and he was the additional driver. I drove my car and he drove the rental. He was involved in an accident in which the other driver was seriously injured. We had rental insurance for damage to the truck. However, the injured driver filed a claim against my boyfriend's insurance. They called and asked for my name. Should I give my name? Could I be completely responsible since I was the primary? And that's from a Chandra. Chandra, a couple of things there that you need to deal with. Simply by virtue of being the, quote, primary on the rental does not necessarily give you liability in the first instance. The issue comes down to, and typically in Florida you're looking at, there's a lot of issues you got to look at, but more or less, for simplicity's sake, there's going to be 3 people potentially liable in any kind of accident you have. The driver is always going to be liable if they're negligent. So your boyfriend has culpability and liability and needs to put his insurance carrier on notice as soon as possible. Also, if there was an owner of a vehicle, they are liable under what we call the dangerous instrumentality doctrine. In this particular situation, though, there's an exception under federal law where it's a rental vehicle that they are very likely going to be have immunity and preempted under federal law. A third category is if you are doing a joint venture or in the line and scope of course of employment for someone. Here in this situation, it sounds like the two of you are moving something together and there could be an argument that that was a joint venture. So there is the potential that you could bear some responsibility for this accident. So it's important that you contact your insurance company because you have a contract with them, and one of your responsibilities is to promptly notify them so that they can do the proper investigation and do the things to take care of and protect you. And they can't do that until they know about the accident. So you need to go ahead and call them and let them know. With respect to giving your name, the short answer is you're going to have to do it sooner or later. So you might as well go ahead and provide that information because if you do not provide it, I mean, this is something we deal with every day, Kelly. We ask people for information. We try to do it politely, and if we don't get responses, we're left with no other option but to go ahead and file suit and to do that and have the tools of discovery. whether that be depositions where we sit someone down, ask them questions, or subpoenas where we ask for records and documents. But the long and short of it is that they're going to get that information, so it's better to be upfront about it. You can't; things do not go away by ignoring them or putting your head in the sand.
Yeah.
So the facts are the facts, and the law is the law. So get that information, get everybody put on notice, because you want to make sure that those insurance companies do not have any basis to deny liability based off a lack of cooperation on either you or your boyfriend's part. So please do that, and we wish you luck on getting that taken care of.
Good luck.
But you know, that brings up a good point, Kelly. You know, we're talking about with respect to there's a difference between liability and coverage. So, for example, in that situation, a lot of times your own personal vehicle coverage is going to cover you when you are in a rental vehicle. So that's important to think of. But if you're doing some sort of commercial venture,
right.
For example, many of the policies have exclusions these days right. for if you're driving Uber or Lyft or things of that nature. So make sure when you are getting your insurance that you talk with your agent and make sure and describe the different things that you're doing and have an educated discussion with them so they can make sure that you're buying appropriate coverage to take care of you, because the last thing you want to do is have some sort of accident where there is no coverage, because the reason you bought that insurance in the first instance is to protect you from these situations where there may be something that you can't afford to pay someone's hundreds of thousands of medical bills if it's been a serious accident like Chandra was discussing. So you want to make sure that you know what you have and that you have properly disclosed whatever risk that you may be engaging in.
And it can be as crazy as just, you know, I park my car here on the daily, but I don't tell the insurance company that I parked my car here on the daily, and they can deny you your coverage for that basis if you're not absolutely completely straight up with them. So be very, very careful and cautious when you're divulging your information to your insurance company, because they will look for reasons to deny you in a heartbeat.
All right, we have a caller on the line. I think it's a Barbara, please, with a question about an accident. Go ahead, Barbara.
Yes, I was involved in an accident. Actually, I was parked at a red light, and someone came and they hit me in the rear as I was parked. And so I was given a note, not at fault. It said that I wasn't at fault on my police report. But every time I try to get a quote for a different insurance company, they say it shows that I have an accident, and it was an at-fault accident, but I can't understand how I can be an at-fault when I was clearly hit from behind. So everyone said, they said, call Nexus Lexus, but I've never been able to get through, and so that's just something I wanted to check into, but I didn't really know how to go about it, what I should do in reference to that.
Okay, Barbara, there will be, anytime you're in an accident, what they will give you at the scene, if they're following proper procedures, what's called a driver's exchange. That's the first bit of information you get that provides you the contact information and insurance company for the other persons that are involved in the accident, whether that's one of the persons, it sounds like here someone rear-ended you, or if it's multiple. The next step is that they will actually create a crash report, which should place liability on one party or the other. It sounds like you're still waiting on that. That's a public record that you're entitled to get. You can go on, there's different websites, BuyCrash, LexisNexis, where you can get those things, so it's important to have those. But irrespective of what the crash report says, that's not dispositive of who's responsible for the accident, because Kelly, we see it every day where they get it wrong, because you remember the officer wasn't there. They're having to take information after the fact.
Right. They can only take the information that they have, and they can make their assertions, but if they didn't actually see it, they're not actually testifying against you as to whatever happened.
Right,
so,
and that crash report is not admissible in evidence at the end of the day. You have to find the facts to justify your particular situation. The presumption of a rear-end injury is that, or rear-end accident, is that the person that rear-ended is responsible. That's the presumption. There's exceptions, such if you slam on brakes going down the interstate and then someone hits you, that potentially couldn't be avoided. So it sounds like you have a very legitimate case. Please follow up with us. We'll make sure that you get the information and can pursue that claim properly. I think we have another call on the line now. Cindy, go ahead, from Houston County.
Yes, hi. It's a pleasure speaking with you guys, and I'm glad that this topic's on. I was in Florida visiting my mother, who's in a nursing home, and on a Sunday, and I had an accident. I ran into a truck where they said I ran into a truck. I had a medical episode. I had a seizure. But listen, that was on Monday in January, and I was supposed to pay my insurance on the 7th, but I was on ICU on life support. And so my insurance company canceled me. So now I don't know what to do. What do you suggest?
Okay, there's a couple of situations there. It sounds like there may have been a car accident where there was a medical episode. And if there is a legitimate medical episode that you were unaware of, for example,
right.
if you're a known epileptic and you have an epileptic seizure in an accident, you can still be held responsible for it. However, if you have, like, for example, a heart attack and it's nothing you should have known about, nothing you had reason to think was anticipated, sure. It's a sudden and unexpected, a medical episode is a defense to a claim. So there very well may be a potential defense to your claim depending on the specific facts and circumstances. With respect to your insurance, there are requirements that you pay the bills as they come due, or
Correct.
They can potentially cancel you. There are notices that they have to do in order to cancel you especially for a non-payment. They need to send that to you. If that was done and you didn't pay it, then there's a very good likelihood that the coverage will have been properly canceled. But make sure and have that documentation, look at it, call the agent, make sure you know what you have. Put them on notice anyway, because it's better to be safe than sorry. But you want to make sure and get that taken care of now, no matter what. You need to have coverage in place. That's a legal requirement under Alabama law. You have to have a minimum of $25,000 in coverage to protect somebody that you hit, and $50,000 per accident. So you want to make sure you're in legal compliance, because you don't want to make a bad situation work.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to take our first break of the evening. Phone lines are still open. Please give us a call. Welcome back to LawCall. Phone lines are open, 850-392-1544. And over the break, we had an email question come in from Jess. My cousin was killed when his motorcycle hit an SUV. It's been suggested that my cousin was speeding, but the driver definitely turned in front of him. If they can somehow prove that my cousin was over the speed limit, does that mean his family has no claim against the driver? Very good question, Jess. Kelly, what do you think about that?
Very good question. So this is exactly the kind of case that you really do need to reach out to a lawyer immediately, if not sooner, because we can get information like downloads from the vehicles, either the car that he hit and or his motorcycle, these sorts of things, and we can actually show with the downloads from the boxes, basically, the black boxes, as you would call them in an airplane crash, but and these sorts of things, we can get that information so we can show exactly who was doing what at exactly what time and when the impact happened and all that sort of thing. It's also important that you talk to a lawyer because we are a comparative fault state and the law has changed recently, and so if you're over 50% at fault, it's kind of problematic for you. So it's very important that you do talk to a lawyer immediately, if not sooner, and get in touch.
Because you're not, I mean, the speed limit is one factor.
Right.
A jury is ultimately asked to weigh in the balance
Right.
the respective faults of each of the parties. And just going over the speed limit does not preclude you from recovery because that may or may not be what really caused the accident. If you were going the speed limit, it may not have made a difference. So a lot of times we have to get engineers involved to do speed analysis and, would this have made a difference? So it's very, very critical that you get that information. You want to get evidence preserved as soon as possible. It's not,
100%.
It's been, especially in today's age, it's not unusual to have video camera footage that you can obtain, whether it be from someone's Ring camera.
It could be from a pack of sack.
It can be from I've had it as crazy as from a drink machine that had a camera on it, from banks to convenience stores, you name it. And those can be very telling on whether, how that plays out. And, a picture's worth 1,000 words. We can all argue about it, but if you can see what actually happened, there can be a lot of weight to that. So you want to,
as you know, Ted, too, those cycle over every 30 days. They go over very quickly.
I mean, some of them are as quickly as 72 hours,
Right.
depending on the capacity of the system, the hard drives that they have. So it's important that you get that information very, very quickly. And it sounds like this is a very, very serious case.
And very
so you
tragic.
want to make sure that they have that information so they can do whatever they can for the beneficiaries to make sure and find whatever recovery they can.
So sorry about your cousin.
And in those situations too, Kelly, it's very important. One of the things that we have in Florida, unlike we had the caller from Houston County earlier, in Alabama there are mandatory bodily injury limits that you have to carry on your car. Our Florida legislature has made the decision that Florida residents are not required to carry any coverage to protect someone if they hurt them. So that makes it critical that you protect yourself.
Get uninsured motorist or underinsured
right,
motorist.
And tell the audience
1,000%.
briefly what uninsured motorist is, Kelly.
So uninsured motorist protection is a coverage that you buy for yourself that protects you and your loved ones if you are injured by someone who is under or uninsured. And we have, I think it's like the second highest rate of uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist in the country. It's very high up there. If it's not second, it's third. I mean, it's really high up there. So it's super important that you do protect yourself, because when you buy that insurance, that's coverage that will take care of you. So if somebody hits you who, like Ted said, doesn't carry bodily injury insurance because you're not required to do so in Florida, you're only required to have $10,000 in personal injury protection and $10,000 in property damage. But if you have underinsured or uninsured motorists, it takes care of you. So it's a secondary insurance beyond somebody else that has bodily injury or whatever. You can actually collect against that as well. So it's very wonderful.
And it's important if you get in a situation where the damages are going to exceed any coverage that's out there with the other party, that you look at all the possible avenues of uninsured motorist coverage. So for example, not just your own personal policy, but if you're a passenger in the car with someone that is hit, possibly you can qualify under the driver's policy. If you live with blood relatives or your spouse has a separate policy, you have to look at those, because very typically policies have coverage that extend to resident relatives, people that live in your house that are related by blood or marriage. if they have a policy that has the coverage, it could apply to you. So it's important that you look at all possible options, especially when you're talking about a case that has damages in excess of those limits. And it's not unusual that we run into a situation where we have someone that does not have health insurance.
Right.
And so you're looking at this accident, any coverages that we can find is the only, quote, health insurance that they're going to have to help them. So it's important that you leave no stone uncovered. And you know, a lot of people come into the office and they tell me they have full coverage.
It's not the case.
And you know, the quote legal definition of full coverage is legal coverage, which is what you said, the 10,000 in property damage and 10 in PIP no fault. And that just, the name does not mean what it sounds like it means. It's the same thing where, you know, a lot of people tell me they think we're a no fault state, which we are. But that doesn't mean what it sounds like it means. Yes, we all have to carry the PIP, personal injury protection, that will pay up to $10,000 of your medical expenses, regardless of fault, in any accident. So that's important because that will pay as you go. The liability coverage for the person that causes the accident will only pay out once when you settle the case, or either you get a judgment against them and go and collect it. So you got to get that treatment. That PIP helps with that, but that doesn't mean you don't have that fault-based claim against whomever caused the accident. So, and I've even seen, you know, officers that kind of suggest that to people. It's a no-fault state. I don't have to worry about who's responsible for the accident. But that could not be further from the truth.
Could not be further.
So make sure you look at all possible options whenever you have an accident like that. Another issue is that, you know, Kelly mentioned we now have we've always been a state that has comparative fault, but due to recent tort reform, we now have a cutoff on that comparative fault statute that says, before, even if you were only as low as, if the at-fault party was only 1% liable, you could still recover 1% of your damages. We now have a statute that precludes you from recovery if they are able to establish that you are more than 50% responsible for the accident. And that can become a very convoluted analysis, and depending on how many people are involved in the accident, to try to figure out that threshold. So it's important, like you said, that you have someone helping you from the get-go so that that case stays on the right path and you're able to establish the facts in order to properly pursue that claim. Another change in that tort reform that we did not have in the past is that now claims have to be brought within 2 years of the accident, where before you had 4 years within which to either resolve or bring your claim. So it's now more important than ever to get those claims looked at in a timely fashion, because it's not unusual, Kelly. We see it every day that people have not resolved their claims within 2 years. Every day.
It's actually for some of them, it's actually kind of rare. I mean,
right. Depending on the nature of your injuries.
The more money that is at stake in terms of recovery, the longer the claims typically take.
Right.
Unless it's a death claim and something like that.
And nobody wants to go straight to surgery. No. They're going to do everything they can to avoid it, and sometimes that takes time. So make sure and look at all your options and make sure you are educated on whatever decision you make. We're going to take our last break of the night, but phone lines are still open, 850-392-1544. Welcome back. We're in our last segment now of Law Call, and Kelly, one thing you and I were talking about briefly during the break is that a common misconception that just because something is criminal is that it doesn't also have a tort or a civil aspect of it. And you know, we very frequently handle cases where someone has been the victim of a crime, and it may be a case that can be pursued. Just
Absolutely.
talk about that a little bit.
So if you get battered, if you get hurt by somebody else deliberately, or other things that, I don't want to say the word, but there are other things that can happen that are criminal. They can also be tortious, meaning that they're civil liability as well.
Most of them will be. The bigger issue is going to be, is there an avenue of recovery?
Correct.
Very frequently.
Most insurance companies will basically, for something that's deliberate, they will exclude those sorts of things. But there's sometimes ways that we can kind of slide some coverage in and get you taken care of. So it's always worth a discussion. It may not pan out necessarily, but it's always worth a discussion with an attorney if something happens to you that's criminal, that somebody does to you and hurts you in some way.
That's separate and distinct from the criminal case, but just something that always needs to be looked at and explored. A lot of times will be difficult from a coverage aspect, but coverage is not consistent with what your exposure is. There may be assets that are there you don't know. You just have to look at it and see, and you need somebody that's a professional to look into that, because those get even more complicated. But it is important that you know that. As I tell people all the time, information is key. You cannot make educated decisions unless you have that information and know what to do and looked at.
Yeah, the good news is we're always going to talk to you, and we're going to be able to have a conversation with you without you being charged anything. So information, like you said, is totally key. And just have the conversation, make the phone call. Say, hey, is this something to be pursued? And we'll talk to you about it and say yes or no and maybe or whatever. So, yeah.
Well, very good, Kelly. I think we've about to the time of their shout outs. I think we have a couple of photos we're going to throw up here. There's Miss Pam and Mr. Larry. They were lifetime Sheriff Association contributors. They're with our Sheriff Tommy Ford.
Hey, Sheriff.
That's some folks that were in the D.W. Smith Golf Tournament this weekend for us there on the Panama Country Club.
Yeah.
And that's another picture of that. Someone putting. Looks like they're getting ready and practicing. I hope they did well. There is Larry Perry and Lauren. They're at the golf tournament. Oh, there's me. There's me, and that's my daughter on the right, and Miss Giovanna there. They were at world class over there, and Destin did well. And that's me and my brother and my niece and my daughter again. We had a big time at Destin.
Super fun.
That's all. Kelly, you got any shout outs?
I just want to say hi to my husband, who's homesick, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
I know.
We need to get Jim.
Need to get Jim better. Yes.
I'm glad you were able to make it up here.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Of that.
Enjoyed.
I need to give a quick shout out to Buford up in Jackson County. My mom also in Jackson County. My dad, who's also been sick. Everybody's been sick down in Mexico Beach. Grant Risch over in St. Joe. And I think that's it that I have. I guess I should. I didn't show my son, so I guess he should get a shout out.
Say a shout out for your
Judson, you better be asleep now. And also Rick from the Marlin. I would be remiss if I forgot him. Yeah. So I think we got everybody.
I think we got it.
So hopefully, good show, and we made it through another evening. And we'll be back next week with another special show. So make sure and call in with your questions. And
thank y'all.
Always tune in every Sunday night. Thank you.